Welcome back, everybody, to the Self-Love series with Casatiga, where our goal of the show is to spread and share self-love through others and their stories. Today is episode 9, I believe, and we have a guest today, back to just one guest, and our guest on today's show is Celia. Celia, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we'll just start with our opener. So if you will just tell us some good news that you have right now, and then also just what you love about yourself.
Awesome. Some good news this week being Christmas week. I always look forward to getting with my family, but even cooler, we have this extended family Christmas day planned with my extended Moleni family. And I'm super excited to see everybody there. And just seeing my kids open up the presents is nice and fulfilling as well.
Yes.
So yeah.
So exciting. I love that. And then what about what you love about yourself?
Lately, I've really been just noticing how awesome my body is. I don't think one particular piece or like one particular part of my body I love, but I've just been really thankful for the things that I've been able to do because of my body. Having babies, being able to recover, putting myself through hard workouts has been really helpful for my mental health, and I'm just so grateful for my body. I don't know how to explain that. Just the simple things, even like I sprained my wrist the other month, and I'm like, wow, we use our wrist a lot.
Yeah.
And then when it recovered, I was like, wow, thanks, body.
Yes.
Just really thankful for what we can do. Specifically my body, I'm just super thankful for it.
Love that. Thank you so much. That's such a good thing. And so just getting straight into it, could you tell us a little bit about what your career is and what made you decide to get into that field of work?
So right now I'm a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW, also known as a therapist, mental health therapist. Earlier on in college, I was studying to be an accountant because I really thought I was good at numbers, with numbers, and I thought, well, this is a pretty good career. And then in my second year of college, I noticed that it wasn't really hitting the spot, so to speak. And so I really noticed how I was drawn to human behavior and how and why people act the way they do. And so I actually went on my mission after my sophomore year, and it solidified to me how I have a strength to be able to connect with people and to really see people in a non-judgmental way, being able to look at their past and connecting with them. And just accepting them. And so I feel like that really solidified my choice in career, was when I was able to see that strength in me, in myself. And so coming back, I finished my education and then pursued a master's at the University of Utah, and been practicing being a therapist for the last almost 10 years. So
holy cow, that long?
I'm old.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you don't look like you would have been doing it that long. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
So with your line of work, I mean, I'm sure you see a ton of things, but I know you work a lot with trauma, with people going through trauma. So could you explain what trauma is for people that may not be familiar with the term?
Yes, simply put, it's a distressing or disturbing experience to someone. And, you know, a lot of my clients, maybe 99% have gone through some kind of trauma. There's different kinds of trauma we see with people that have gone through the natural disasters, or being raped, being sexually abused, being physically abused, witnessing domestic violence. So yeah, there's all sorts of kinds of trauma. You see some that have stemmed from childhood, and because they've stemmed from childhood, it has actually affected the later parts of development in their brain. Does that make sense? And so some of those stages of development in our later years are affected by trauma if that were to occur in early childhood. And then we see some that have happened in adulthood. Those things can be seen. And, I like to explain to my clients, especially teenagers or children, trauma, unresolved trauma is kind of like putting a little gremlin. I mean, I'm talking to children and teenagers, putting a gremlin into a box and then putting it away without really discussing, processing, finding meaning, and, getting over it, putting it in a box and kind of like ignoring it. And then what does that gremlin do? It's like kind of making ruckus in that box, and those can kind of surface through anxiety, depression. We see other personality disorders that stem from not being able to resolve trauma, those kinds of trauma. And so, that's kind of like that's how I explain trauma to kids or teenagers. And we really have to open up that box and address it. And there's certain ways to do that. And so,
Yeah. So what would you say would be an indicating sign for someone to where you feel that they need to take it to the level of therapy, seeing professional help for it to deal with their trauma? Is there anything you can think of indicators for parents maybe, or even if it's for a grown adult that has experienced trauma in their childhood or at a young age and never fully dealt with it?
Okay, so let's start with the adults maybe having gone through childhood trauma. And I think specifically with our Polynesian community, I'm not trying to put our people down in any way, but a lot of discipline in our culture isn't really the best way of disciplining. We think of discipline, we think of hitting, putting down our children, and things like that. And as adults, having gone through that, we have to maybe first and foremost be aware of ourselves. How do we react in stressful situations? Is this really bleeding into my marital life? Are we, what I mean? Am I able to address conflict in a healthy manner? And I think there's just so many mental illnesses. I mean, do I have ADHD symptoms? Do you know what I mean? Things like that. And as parents, looking for signs of just seeing your children, seeing a change in mood. Are they staying in their room longer? Are they distancing themselves? Do you notice that they're reacting differently to normal stimuli? Like if, are they overreacting in situations where they normally wouldn't? So those are some of the red flags that to be aware of as parents, and just really noticing that and then being able to talk to them is key.
Awesome. Do you feel like there is anything else important about trauma to because I'm going to get to what you feel are good healthy things of self-care through trauma, but is there anything else you can think of that's come to your mind that's important to share with others to know about when it comes to trauma?
There's so much that I wish I could totally talk all day about it. But I did want to address just really the developmental stages and how trauma affects the human race. So when we think about a baby being born and developing, we could liken that into a ladder. And so when we're first born, the bottom of the ladder is being developed, and that's survival. So you see a baby crying, they're hungry, right? And when there's child neglect or, attachment issues with the mom or dad or trauma going on around them, that really does affect the rest of the ladder being developed. And that's where we see signs of not being able to really have good moral standards or really having a good self-awareness of ourselves and just being, and so I feel like childhood trauma. I see that a lot in my field. I work with a lot of teenagers and children, and a lot of trauma comes from our childhood. And so, and also as parents, being aware of how we're raising our children. Is this okay? Is this discipline really okay? What is the definition of abuse? What is the definition of verbal abuse? I feel like that is super important for ourselves to educate each other and ourselves, so that because I didn't really know a lot of things until I was in school, and until like recently, as I'm researching new data and things like that, what harms the brain and what the effects of like distressing the brain has on our lives. And so it's super important. So
Did you find it hard, like being a mom now? Was it hard for you and your husband to to practice those different ways of parenting, maybe from what is normal and typical in our culture? Have you found that was hard?
Yeah, so my husband, he's traditional Samoan upbringing. His dad comes from Samoa, his mom grew up in Hawaii, and his upbringing is what I normally hear about in the Polynesian culture, being raised with a lot of discipline, meaning, slaps here and there, and beatings. I don't like to, I love his family, but it was the normal, what I'm seeing is the normal way of upbringing in a Polynesian culture. So in my background, it was a little different. I feel like my mom and my dad, by the time I came, I'm number 9. And so they were probably professional parents at that stage. And so the way they raised me was a lot different than what my husband saw. And so coming together to raise our children, I'm constantly, and he probably thinks this is annoying, but like every time I research something and I find that this is so great, like let's do this, I will share it with him. I'm like, okay, listen to this podcast, listen to this book, this Audible, this is great. And he's like, but it's one thing to be like, yes, let's do it. And then in the grind of things, or in the hard times, like when your kid is super annoying, and we revert back to our default. And what is our default? What we grew up on or with. And so it's a challenge. It's a big challenge, and it's caused a lot of like ripples in our marriage and in our family, but it's something that I feel like we're working towards. And him being self-aware, and him noticing, okay, that wasn't okay. And this is what it has done to me in my life, and this is what I want my children to grow up with. And
that's so awesome.
it's very much noticing ourselves. Parenting is a lot about self-awareness. Where is this anger coming from? Where is this annoyance coming from? And even I'm noticing myself being overstressed and things like that, and doing things that my mom didn't even do to me. So it's a lot of work.
That's
I would say.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so kind of still, if we could just stick with the parenting thing for just a little bit longer, have you noticed maybe a difference in your kids' responses of maybe moments where you guys have slipped up in reverting back to like acting out on your frustrations with them, towards them, and also how they also react or receive it when you try to do it in like a more productive, or I guess loving way? So, we're still in the younger years of our parenting, and we're still learning. And so we have noticed when we react automatically from our state of anger or frustration, you can definitely see it in your children. They will lie to you so they don't make you angry. They create distance, you know what I mean? Even, my oldest is almost 9. And so we notice a lot of those, things, those negative effects of us just reacting to our default, or going back to our default ways of reacting to anger and stress. And then on the flip side, trying to, I think one thing that we're trying to do is having that open communication with our children, the open dialogue with them, being like, hey, we're new at being parents. And so, if we slip up, we try to make sure that we're super sorry. It wasn't your fault. This is because we were angry, and maybe this is what we can do next time. And maybe you can, we'll try to do this as a family, okay? And so being aware.
And then yes, we do notice the opposite side where we do implement the things that we learn, and it's magic.
Yeah. That's so awesome.
But it's hard to do, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's definitely more work on the parents' end. But I love what you've shared. I feel like, especially taking it back to the culture, like I feel like I never witnessed that kind of like parenting of not like reacting automatically in a negative way towards your kids or like slapping them or anything. I never noticed not reacting that way until I met the Molenis, like from Bishop and Kathy to Elsie and Gusty, and then now like with you. And I think it's so awesome. I'm so grateful to like have witnessed that, because I mean, me and Muka have had conversations after like being around you guys and seeing like the way you guys parent. I think it's so awesome, and it's totally doable. Like it's that whole thing that talks about like ending generational traumas.
Yes.
And that's something I think that maybe gets overlooked and not thought about, but totally contributes to it, because we just fall into, like you said, of what we're used to and what we know, and we think that is just how it is, how it should be. That's a role of a parent, when it can be so much more than that and so much more positive.
Right.
So I love that, and I'm grateful for your family's example of that.
Oh, we're not perfect.
Oh, I know, but you guys definitely try, and I love that, and it's such an example to all those around you. So I love that. Could you share with us the importance of what you know as far as how parents talk to their kids?
It's so important. Our kids, especially if they're coming already from a place of trauma, and if we're in this place where, oh man, I'm noticing that I have a lot to work on as a parent, and I may have been a little harsh on my children. The importance of how we talk to our children, uplifting them, the way we talk, the tone of voice is huge. It impacts our children forever. Like I said, I'm dealing with clients who have come from a background where either their parents didn't care, they're neglected, a lot of negativity, you know what I mean, abuse, verbal abuse has been going on, and it really affects the rest of their life. And it's a lot of work to undo or to work through trauma than it is to come from a place where we're a healthier place. Does that make sense? And so it's really a lot of work to undo or to work through and process trauma than to work from a healthy place. And so for parents such as myself, being aware of our tone, being aware of the words we use with our children does become their conscious. And so if we're constantly calling them names, you're stupid, you're dumb, you little, you know what I mean? That's what they're going to take with them into their adulthood, is those words that we're often saying to our children. That's super powerful. And if we're always yelling, that's another thing that they're always going to be in this sense of hyperactive, hyperactive state, where it's not very healthy to always be in a hyperactive state.
Yeah.
If anything, we want our children to learn how to navigate this world being in an integrative state of mind, meaning we want their logical and their emotional brain to be equally working so that they can make healthier and wiser decisions in their own life. And so sometimes trauma will make this side of the brain, the emotional side, super strong, where we act out of pure emotion. We're going to lash out, or sometimes we go on the logic. The logic brain is a lot more developed as a result of trauma, and that's where we find OCD behaviors, super controlling behaviors. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, the way we talk to our children is really setting them up and setting their foundation for their future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I feel like I've seen it on yours before, where you practice words of affirmation with your kids. Have you always done that with them? Could you explain a little bit to people what that is, an example of how you do that and practice that with your kids?
Sure. So words of affirmation, it really is, so I like to think of our brain as kind of this they call it neuroplasticity. So if you think of a plastic substance or like Play-Doh, it's kind of like you can form it in the way you want. Our brain is similar to the fact that we can wire our brain into a certain direction, whatever direction we want. And as kids, because their brains are so like just developing, being able to practice those positive words, positive self-beliefs is really setting up the hardwire, like I said, the foundation to what kind of adult they're going to be and how much self-love they're going to have in the future. And so, I mean, I don't, have a checklist of, hey, I'm going to do self-love or affirmations, positive affirmations with my kids. I am just trying to flood them with positivity. When they sing, just a little quick, like funny thing. My brothers sing and they're wonderful at it. But I remember when I was singing, I was probably like 6. I was singing my heart out, and I think it was one of my brothers. I don't know who it was. Maybe Lars. But he looked to me and he's like, "Can you stop singing?" And that just right there, I feel like has stuck with me. Even to this day, to where I'm like, people are like, "Do you have a voice?" I'm like, I just joke around like, "Yes, I'm the best singer," but inside I'm like, "No, I don't." But even little things just like that. And so I make it a point that whenever they're trying something new, if they're singing their heart out, I'm like, I stop whatever I'm doing and I'm like, "Yes, girl, sing." When they're having that eye contact with you and they're just singing their heart out, I make it a point to, that's the positive affirmation for the day. Yes, you can do this. You are worth it. You are amazing. You're a good singer. You're a good person. You're beautiful. You're smart, And so I try to do that. We always say how much we love each other. I just love voicing that to my kids. And in hopes that they can build a strong self-love platform for the future.
I love that so much. Thank you. So with kind of reverting back to trauma that we were talking about, what would you say what does self-care look like when going through trauma? What are things that people can do to help them?
So depending on the type of trauma and self-care go hand in hand. If anything, self-love and self-care is probably the number one thing you can do to get through the trauma. One of the techniques that we use and one of the modalities that I use when working with with clients that have been through trauma is we will say things like, if your daughter was going through this, what would you do for her, or how would you help her, or what would you say to her? And that a lot of times flicks a switch or flicks the light on for my clients when asking those questions. And so when we think of self-love, it's really imagining yourself as your daughter or your future, your kids, or someone that you love so dearly. And what would you say to them? How would you help them? In this specific situation with trauma, I would definitely start by being more self-aware. A lot of times we just go through our daily routines, not really knowing what triggers are to us, or what bothers us, or what we're really going through. And so really just being self-aware, noticing your sensations. If you're going through trauma, what are your sensations? What are the usual images that are popping through your head? What are the feelings that you're feeling normally and usually? If those are predominantly negative feelings, those are red flags. What are your thoughts throughout the day? And so those things that's what I always start with my clients is, it's called SIFT. Sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. Being able to sift every day to really get a clear picture of how you react to your environment around you. And that's a big indicator of whether you're going to need professional help or whether you're going to just be able to get through and process through the trauma on your own. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
So is a kind of like after sifting, if they find that they're not able to kind of like control those things or like really get a handle on it, is that what indicates when they need professional help over being able to get through it on their own?
Yeah. And so if you find yourself having sensations that are uncontrollable, or images that are just keep popping up in your mind that are, you know, from the traumatic experience, and affecting your work life, your home life, your personal life, your relationships, those are big red flags.
Yeah.
If you're self-harming, obviously, if you're suicidal, having suicidal ideation or plans of suicide, big red flags.
Yeah.
And so those are the red flags that you need to be aware of that might indicate, or actually definitely indicate, that you need professional help.
Yeah. So what would your advice be? Maybe like what is some ways to be more aware, some actionable things for parents to do that maybe are listening to this and they're having some like kind of red flags pop up in their mind about a child that they have that may be going through it? What would be like your advice to them, things that they could start doing?
I would say first and foremost, talking to your child about some of the red flags that you've noticed in them, and having that open dialogue and saying, and really educating yourself first on trauma and being able to help your children know what trauma is. And something that I came across this last week was trauma is, okay, so our body, the way we react to trauma, so trauma is a normal, when we react to trauma, it's a normal way of reacting to an abnormal experience. And so a lot of times when we go through trauma, we feel alone. We feel like we're the only ones going through it. We feel like there's no hope. Those are the red flags. And so being able to educate our children of, you know, something happened and your body is reacting normally to something that abnormally happened to you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so really just normalizing normalizing their experience to the point where they feel like it's normal to be reacting this way.
That I'm feeling this way.
That you're feeling this way. It's okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Any human would be feeling that way if they were to go through a distressful or disturbing experience as well. And so I think that would be key, and also seeking professional help and being able to help, because professionals are out there, and we're here because we have the tools to help. Yeah.
Last one, when it comes to like a question for others, is just what your advice would be to give to others that are dealing internally with trauma, that haven't opened up about it or done anything about it.
Ooh, that's a tricky one.
Yeah.
I would definitely suggest, again, noticing how it really affects your day-to-day life. Are you seeing symptoms surface? Are you seeing anxiety in certain areas of your life that are unbearable? Are you seeing yourself become depressed at a certain time of year? Because not all trauma has been unresolved. The unresolved trauma are results. You see results as far as, you see it surfacing through mental illnesses. And so if you see those symptoms, and it feels unsettling to you inside, I would definitely suggest and recommend you seek professional help, because talking to or just talking about your trauma doesn't necessarily mean you're processing through it. And so find a trauma-informed therapist that can help you, again, like I said, that box with the gremlin, open that box and address those gremlins or / trauma in a professional manner. Yeah. Because they're very, very delicate, sensitive, and we have to go about those in very, very a special way. Yeah. And so
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So Celia, what is your automatic pick-me-up when you are feeling down on yourself?
When I'm feeling down on myself, one of the things that I really love and has worked for me in the last couple of years, or the last 10 years, is working out. I show up for myself working out. And so, example, a couple months ago, I was feeling like, I don't want to work out. That's a red flag for me, because that's kind of like my daily dose of medication. And so working out is automatic. Number two, I love to have face-to-face time with the people that I love. And I have a lot of besties. My husband makes fun of me. He's like, you are the only one that has like 100 besties. And it's not like that. I just love my friends so much. And being face to face with them really just fills my heart. That's number 2. And number 3 is just spending time with my family, my children specifically.
Awesome. Yeah, I love those. So our last thing that we do is a call to action. For everyone that watches this episode to kind of apply something to help them with their self-love while they're on their journey to grow and strengthen it. Can you think of a call to action that you think would be good? Maybe it would be trying what you said you do, your first thing, of kind of taking it literally like it is like your daily dose of medication, of moving your body, of being active, and tying that into what you shared of what you love about yourself is just all that your body does. So maybe would you agree on that, of trying to be active and while doing so just realizing all the things that your body does?
Definitely. I totally agree with that call to action. Moving your body. Move it or lose it is what I do with my clients.
Love that.
Move your body so you can lose your temper. You know what I mean? And lose all the negativity in yourself. It really does change the wiring of your brain. That's why I love working out. And when you do it, you know how it feels. It's just like it really is a dose of medication.
Yes.
Releasing those happy hormones.
Awesome.
Literally.
Yes, I love that. Perfect. And that's a good one that I can apply and use as well this week too. So thank you so much, Celia, for coming today and for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with us. And to those of you that may be going through trauma, or someone you know is, we hope that this episode has helped you to kind of give you some actionable tools or guidance on where to go from here to get help, and to show yourself more love, and that you're going to show up for yourself. Know that you are seen and that your feelings are valid. And we are so grateful for all of you watching and tuning in and supporting the series. We'll see you next time.